we go. So thank you everyone for joining us today, Wednesday, 1 p.m. I'm joined by the fantastic Nick Hudson from THDP Design, and we've got an amazing presentation here. This is an opportunity to learn all about Nick and his design studio as well. So Nick, without further ado, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And the floor is yours.
Good. Can you see my screen with THDP on the front?
I can.
Jolly good. As we did the test, then you couldn't see it. Okay, so this is just a quick intro to our studio, who we are, what we do, etc. So my wife and I founded the company in 2005. My wife is Manuela Menino. I'm Nicholas Hickson. My wife is an architect and I'm an interior designer. And we founded the company, in fact, in Italy after we started a project there. For the 2006 Olympics, we were lucky to be invited to design a resort hotel very quickly, very fast, and we lived on site for 18 months in the Italian Alps, which was an amazing experience. And then decided after that project to actually start our own company. So we were kind of accidentally fallen into hospitality design. This is our team. So we have a mixture of Italian architects and designers, and Dan is from Lithuania. I'm British, my wife is Italian, so it's a really Anglo-Italian mix of people. We have a studio in London, in Deptford in London, and we're opening a studio again in Milan this July. And Giada on the top left there is actually organizing that for us. So I'll just show you some of the more recent projects that we've been working on, and just kind of lift the lid and look under the hood and describe how we design them, why we designed them the way we did, etc. And as I said, you know, this is kind of designed for maybe someone who doesn't know a lot about hospitality, just wants to know more and see kind of the processes involved in working on some of these larger projects. So this is the Hilton Frankfurt, which we started working on in 2017. And we were invited by Hilton to start working on the guest rooms first, and then kind of gradually moved into the public area. The hotel has 324 rooms. We designed also the presidential suites, the ballroom, the meetings area, and the final part of the project was the lobby. So when we start working on a project, we tend to look at the location, what's around it, the history of Frankfurt, you know, why it has the culture that it has, in a way, kind of evolving the story of the actual project itself, and evolving the general look and feel of the interior. You know, we get engaged in space planning, and this is one of the drawings that we produced in relation to the lobby area and the kind of complex layout that it had. It's a kind of atrium space, in fact, with the reception in this area and the bar in this area. The restaurant is at the back of the lobby, and there's kind of communicating areas, lifts, etc., go through to the meetings area, and lifts that go up to the guest room accommodation over 12 floors. Again, we tend to work on really the spatial planning and kind of enhancing that as much as possible. Lobby spaces in particular over the last, say, 10 years have become areas of massive concern for hotels, because they are tended to be historically kind of void spaces which you kind of transition through. And nowadays people want to make the most of that space and incorporate bar areas or restaurant areas and F&B, you know, areas within the lobby to kind of maximize their potential, really. In formulating the project, obviously we create mood boards in relation to finishes, scheduling, you know, the various upholstery elements, lighting elements, whatever. And this storytelling evolved essentially from the idea of essentially was Manhattan. The Frankfurt sits on the River Main because of its skyline. It's synonymous with kind of the Little Manhattan area, and it's often known as Manhattan. So one of the early concepts was essentially loft living in the center of Frankfurt. So we kind of concentrated the look and feel on this kind of serious, sophisticated palette of colors, and essentially the idea really was to evolve that look and feel in terms of, you know, its kind of eclectic styling as such. This is an image of the bar, for example. So part of the lobby is obviously the check-in area. So again, this area existed in terms of this rear wall area, which we didn't really touch as such in terms of its form, but we just reclad it, reformalized it, and redressed it. Again, that was kind of a budgetary issue. But most of the other look and feel of the space is tending to be quite dark, quite elegant, quite sophisticated. And again, it tends to incorporate images from.
Apologies, Nick. You need to unmute yourself there. Are you back? There you go,
I'm
Nick.
back.
Crack
All
on,
right.
crack on.
Okay. So again, the idea of the reception pod as such is a kind of reminiscent of kind of a New York concierge desk within a kind of apartment building as such. It's having a pod like this kind of breaks down that barrier between guest and check-in staff, rather than having this kind of long bank on a large reception kind of corporate desk. This feels more individual, etc. The lobby bar itself, again, the palette of colors was quite sophisticated, quite dark, a lot of mirroring behind the bar itself, and it was kind of reminiscent of a New York bar area really, and a lot of brass, etc. We incorporated a specialized coffee maker, which was again just colored to the kind of color that we used in the rest of the palette of finishes. But the dressing of the interior was a little bit more residential, incorporating little bar straps on the back of the seating, for example, incorporating mosaic tiling, and just kind of working on the overall look and feel of the project. The F&B concept within the project itself was also very local. And again, that's something that Hilton really tries to kind of work on their hotels now, in making sure that the actual offering of the food and drinks is very tailored to the actual space. In relation to the guest room, the overall look and feel again was again based on this idea of Manhattan, and the idea of being rather eclectic. When I mean eclectic, what I mean is that my idea of a kind of a New York apartment is that something that's evolved over time, where someone has traveled or gone to the kind of Greenwich Market and bought a piece of furniture, something that they really like, and brought that into the scheme. So the idea really was to kind of have a palette of colors which was representing kind of an international travel, mixing in natural leathers, wood finishes, the kind of tailored look as such. But then the concept of the headboard itself was kind of a mismatch of two different elements, or two different nightstands, as if someone had gone out and bought one table at one point and then another table at another point, or the partner had bought one thing and then the other partner bought the other. So the idea was kind of that the lights don't match, the headboards doesn't match, the nightstands don't match, but in a way they have this kind of complementary feel which generates its own aesthetic. Part of our project, we would produce 2D renderings. We would also produce 3D renderings, and this is a 3D rendering looking down onto the project. And again, just really helps the local team think about the use of space. One of the ideas for this space, guys, can you just turn your microphone off? One of the ideas of this space is that you have this amazing window, a corner window. So the idea of evolving the desk, which is fundamental within a Hilton hotel, because it tends to be a workspace, is that this actually now faces into the window itself. The desk is something freestanding. It has a cabling actually punched into it, so that you immediately have somewhere you can actually plug in your laptop, and you can sit in the window, or you can sit on a desk chair as well. The idea of utilizing that space and making most of that, leveraging that asset that we have, which is this amazing view into the skyline, is really important now in kind of planning a hotel room. The idea of incorporating kind of circular motifs or circular artworks and circular nightstands, again, which is something which just very gently just reinforces itself through the project, and something which you wouldn't notice unless someone pointed out to you, kind of almost circular desk, circular rug. These kind of forms or shapes, I really like to use in a kind of very soft narrative within the hotel. The idea of using circular artwork in this way was actually kind of is actually because I see this kind of negative space there. on the wall. And my eye jumps at that, and I think I want to fill that with a circle rather than a square. And again, the idea of using circular artwork was something which, again, was just reinforced throughout the project, the idea of using a circular mirror on the wall and cutting through it as such, and the idea of having artwork cut through. And again, you can see here when you leverage these assets that the hotel has, and you use this amazing skyline, it's something which then the hotel embraces. It embraces the outdoor, embraces something it's part of within the city. And the idea of having this lounge chair facing into that view, having breakfast there, for example, is something which for Hilton is very, very important to make use of those things. The bathroom is a little bit interesting because, again, this was a kind of soft refurbishment. We only touched certain aspects of the bathroom. Bathroom tends to be, in a hotel area, one of the most expensive things to actually refurbish, because if you imagine this hotel has something like 295 rooms, and actually knocking out all of the bathrooms is extremely noisy, dirty, and it's a very long work. In this case, we actually left a lot of the tiling and the floor tiling here. The shower, for example, was left. And we incorporated this almost plug-in style vanity element, which is essentially just a pre-made element which arrives on site and just actually drops into the existing hole as a one-fit element. This is extremely quick, fast, and clean to saved a lot of time. And it's a really important consideration when you're doing a design, especially like this, that you actually think about the work on site that's required to actually install it. And I think, although there's a certain compromise between what is existing and what is new, I think in a way for most guests that's quite acceptable because what you see in front of you is this very well presented vanity element. This is the ballroom in the space as well. So again, we worked on all the meeting areas, the ballroom, the lighting feature was our design. And again, this was an existing space, had this very complicated wall shape, which we tend to build in all of the partition screening, for example, but also had a very complicated upper shape to this, which we resolved and actually cleaned up and brought up to date. So with a kind of minimal intervention within the space, by leaving many of these wall shapes, but by just filling in the top area, it would be interesting to maybe show you a kind of before and after. It was just a simple cleanup work, really, and a light touch, but by delivering, the maximum value and that maximum potential back to the hotel for the least cost, maximum potential is again a key asset. So this is another hotel which is just opening. It's an early opening. And again, it's a project we started almost 3 years ago and has had a long evolution. Working in some areas of Italy, particularly in Rome, is a very complicated process. And this building has thrown up some very interesting problems for us because it's an adaptive reuse of almost 2 buildings. This is the lobby area. Again, this is kind of an early photograph that's just been taken. So you can see here, this is actually you can see there's actually 2 buildings here. This is an existing hotel, and this is an old office building, which incorporates a low element, a higher element, and then there's a very complicated union of these 2 buildings by this central piece here. So again, the building is very complicated, very unhotel-like in some respects. And again, the nature of that presented its own problems for us. Can you still hear me, Stephen?
Amazing, absolutely.
Okay, jolly good. So I just saw you disappearing. These are some interior shots of the building itself. Again, it was a Hotel Commodore originally. Not particularly elegant facade. The interiors were very dated. The use of space was again very mixed. So we did a lot of moving things around in relation to the building. Part of the concept design work was the room and convivium, the idea of meeting and greeting and having. One thing that's very common in Italy, obviously, is the squares. It's something we don't tend to have so much in the UK. The idea of squares and buildings around a square and people coming together in the evening and dining together and eating together and drinking together. This idea of convivium, really. And it's something which we wanted to bring into the hotel and create a kind of unified lobby space, which the hotel didn't have whatsoever before. And again, offer another element of FF&E. This is again some of the draft layouts of the space, and you can see the This is actually the entrance of the hotel here on the bottom right. You come through, there's kind of a long journey, in fact, which again is part of the, the feeling of going into the hotel, and you drop down actually through a slope into a main lobby area. The reception's right at the back. And that was a conscious decision, really, to push the check-in area away from the kind of public space, so to kind of give the hotel user some area to kind of sit, dine, eat, retire after a busy day walking around Rome. The restaurant is on the bottom left. The kitchen actually adjoins to that. So again, the spatial use here was very conscious about creating an area where you come down from your room in the evening and really enjoy a kind of social space, a kind of social gathering area. Again, the look and feel of the interior, and some early renderings. Again, this hole, in fact, was again something which didn't exist. In fact, this space was in fact originally an old supermarket with a completely solid ceiling, and an early decision was made by our team to try and ask the client if they would actually look at punching a hole through this space. This actually goes through into the center of the building, and then bringing a huge amount of light into this rather dark, low area. And again, they went for that, and it's really made the space. As you can see here, this is again an early photograph of the space, and you see this kind of mix and matching of furnishing elements. Everything not matching, but kind of drawing itself together. It was a very conscious decision that we made, introducing planting, making use of the natural light, adding lighting in, adding fans into the space, creating a sense of movement and elegance to the space. So this looks through from the lobby into the restaurant area, and the lobby area itself. I mean, this design, as I said, is probably now 3 years old and is just being installed because there were certain delays on site, and it has that kind of slightly industrial look, which in London we see quite a lot, but in Rome is something which you really don't see. So I think this will still have some kind of resonance, really, in the location. I'm hoping that even the locals will make use of this space and make use of the food and beverage offering that they have. Looking at the guest rooms of the hotel, the one thing that marks these particular guest rooms is their size, which is quite small. Again, we're in Rome, so you have to make the most of the space that you have. It's a lively city, but the spaces sometimes are a little bit small. So we're just trying to find the best use of the space. And one of the early concepts that we had was kind of hanging things on a wall, actually making use of the vertical space that we had. So the idea of hanging certain elements, or making use of a desk which was both a writing desk or a desk that you could actually sit and do makeup on, was a kind of very early decision. And the idea of hanging lighting, or hanging the TV, or hanging the mirror, again, was a conscious decision to use that vertical real estate that we had. This is an actual photograph of the head, which is again very simple. Use a little strap-like detail just to kind of counterpoint the idea of kind of traveling or luggage, for example. The artwork sits on a shelf as opposed to sitting on the wall. Again, that was a very conscious decision that we made. And again, the artwork here is local. And the idea of using these kind of leather straps, which are faux supports as such, just to kind of reinforce this idea of luxury travel. These are early renderings of the bathroom areas and the bathroom itself. And again, these are Italian tiling, Italian sanitary fittings. We're using a PVD graphite color here for the taps. The shower screen, again, has got this kind of vertical and horizontal muntins to them, again, just to kind of give you that slightly industrial element. The final project I'll just review is the Torme di Saturnia. This is a spa hotel in Tuscany. It's very famous. It has a natural occurring spa. This water here, this dark green color, is completely naturally occurring. It's been there for a couple of thousand years. It was used by the Romans, and it has a natural spa occurring under this area, where the water actually surges through at about 36 degrees. It's full of hydrogen sulfide, so it's slightly eggy smelling, but it's a fantastic element to swim in. It's very curative, has kind of natural properties. It's kind of very healing, and as I said, it's been used since Roman times, really, to do that. So the conscious decision was made, again, this is a refurbishment, when the architecture was first realized, to actually surround that area with the hotel itself. So the hotel and the adjoining park sit right within that naturally occurring spa. So we were asked by the new owner to really look at a refurbishment of the existing hotel space. And this, again, there was some early kind of look and feel elements that we arrived at, just to kind of drive through back into the hotel, a more residential feel of the hotel. So many of the elements were left in place and were refinished or recalibrated. A lot of the seating was recovered. And again, this was a very conscious decision, one, because of budget, and also because we feel the idea of just taking something which is perfectly acceptable as a seating element, like the sofas here, and simply discarding them is very wasteful. When in fact, they're very beautiful items, very reusable. So we just took the idea very early on to recover them. The table, for example, was existing, and we simply created a new bronze plateau here to kind of cover that. So there's a lot of elements that are reused within the space. The table at the back here is a completely reused item, and the seating here is reused. And again, that was just a conscious decision to be sustainable. The shelving was existing, the fireplace was existing, but it was really feeling very cold, a little bit corporate, and we wanted to give back to it a feeling, a more residential feeling, a little bit more Soho House, as it were. This is the bar area that we have. And again, the colors here were consciously chosen to replicate the colors that you see within the water. The kind of mottling on the back of the chairs, again, was a conscious decision. The sense of erosion, the sense of wear and tear over time that you see in this location is very, very palatable. It's something which was a very mindful decision that we made. The guest rooms were also completely refurbished, and in most cases, the guest rooms, the feeling was that the furniture really had served its purpose and needed to be replaced. And again, so we incorporated new desk, mirror, and dressing area. So a kind of very undesk-like desk, something where you could be as comfortable working as doing your makeup, for example. And the headboard is new. That the mirroring and the lighting is all new in this space. And again, the idea here is to remain slightly classic, slightly. Stephen.
Don't worry, I'll get on it now. Do you know what? This has been I'm the doorman and the muter. It's a full-on task, Nick, but we're ready to go again. We're ready to go.
Oh, was I on mute again?
No, you were perfect. You were absolutely
right.
Perfect. What it is if someone joins, then in the mic's on, I've got to mute them. So I've got to be primed and ready, but I'm learning quickly.
Okay. This is again, so that's kind of the three hotels that, as I said, I've just focused on in terms of just a kind of general introduction to our works. This is a project we completed about 18 months ago in Verona. This is the actual reception check-in desk. The idea in Verona, if you're familiar with Verona, there is the very famous Juliet's balcony, which it's a stone balcony, which has a little kind of arch motif on it. And again, this was kind of a little bit of kind of an infusion of that styling into the reception desk. It's very unconscious in a way. If you didn't know it, you wouldn't see it. But again, this kind of Roman arch also features on the Colosseum, which is also in Verona again. So it's a very kind of Roman aesthetic. I can just show you some of the press and some of the awards that we've worked on recently. So there you are, Stephen. That's a kind of quick half an hour run through a little bit of what we do, a lot of how we work.
I love it. I was sucked into the presentation so much that there were 4 people waiting to get in for a minute or two at one point. So sorry, guys. I've got to keep my eye on the door as well as the presentation. But I loved the projects. We did have one question, Nick, which came in from Guy, and we can open up the floor as well. But as Guy's written this, I thought I'd mention it to you briefly. And it was to do with detailing. And it says, in regards to finishes in the bathroom, specifically brassware accessories, have you completely moved away from chrome as a practice in favor of PVD?
Well, there's a story there, you see, because I mean, I think if you look over the last 5 years, you've seen many companies like Hansgrohe and Grohe and Zucchetti introducing PVD finishes. It's been a story, it's one of those finishes which when it was first announced that were coming out, I think all of them were very confident that they'd actually found a new material which was very, very sustainable, very hard wearing, very technical. And I think the experience that many hotel companies have found is that they're actually a little bit tricky to look after.
Really?
So in fact, the specification that was made for the DoubleTree in Rome, which is a graphite finish from Grower, is not without its problems that we found. It's a finish that actually requires a little bit of care. It's if you're using a product like Viacal onto it, you can actually stain it. So it's a finish which we very much like as designers, because it just offers something other than what is effectively a mirrored finish. But it's not perfect. It's not without its issues, and it's not just a problem that we found with Grower. I think other companies too have had their battles with it. It's been very popular, and I think its popularity has led to some of its issues. That Grower, for example, when they first announced it about 3 years ago, were suddenly inundated with massive amounts of orders, and that has caused them also production issues in relation to how to maintain it. So it's a kind of ongoing process. I think some companies are moving back to powder coating. White and black powder coat finishes are very popular at the moment. And I think when we look forward, chrome maybe will come back again, and maybe black chrome will come back in, or maybe a finish like chrome where you actually get a deposit finish on top of something will come back in, as opposed to being I don't know if you know, PVD is effectively a vapor process that they put into a vacuum chamber,
right.
And the process actually, the color that's achieved on the actual metalwork isn't on the metalwork; it's in the metalwork itself. So it's kind of unlike chrome, which is a deposit essentially of chromium plating, but it's not without its issues, unfortunately. And I'm sure if Grower are on the call, I know Grower did a massive event last week, probably heralding all of these finishes, but it's not without its quirks as such. And I think some ways they've got around it. They found cleaning materials which kind of look after it, but yeah, let the buyer beware as such.
That's amazing. And thank you. Because Guy, I noticed you rejoined halfway, maybe you had connection issues. Don't worry, we're going to put this all on YouTube as well. So Nick just answered everything you need to know about PVD, which is amazing. If anyone here wants to ask a question, feel free to go for it. You can either unmute and ask Nick, or raise your hand, or if you don't want to go on the recording, you can put a little you can put a comment down in the chat, and I'll ask Nick as well. What I was going to say to you, Nick, which is interesting, is because the hospitality sector, I'm sure you've seen a lot of activity in 2018, 2019, amazing hospitality. And then 2020 kicked in, which was a bit of a rough year for everyone. But as we were talking before, as a practice, you're super busy right now. So I would love to hear your initial thoughts on maybe where this year is heading and how you feel about the hospitality sector, and especially as you're winning a lot of projects right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, I think it's been a tricky time for everyone, and not just in terms of who you're working for and the clients that are approaching you, but also just working in general. And I think as designers, obviously, it's possible that you can sit and work at home, but I find it so useful when I'm working on product or materials or scheduling finishes, that not having those in front of me is just problematic. So our studio is open. Can you actually see me, or are you looking at my screen?
I can. What I'll do is I'm going to pull. I can
just show you. Off. I don't know if you can see this.
I can see
studio.
It. Yeah.
So we're all kind of sitting here. Luckily, I was vaccinated about 6 weeks ago. My wife has been vaccinated. One of our team has been vaccinated, and so we're all feeling very safe. But like you say, it's been a little bit problematic, and hospitality in general, I think, has suffered, and particularly in the UK, I think a lot of people are a little bit afraid of where to go. As I said, we're fortunate that we've always worked in Italy, and as I said, we started working in Italy, and we worked in Italy for 8 years. My Italian rather rusty, but I can get by, and I'm surrounded by Italian colleagues, fortunately, who obviously you can bridge that communications area. But we're very fortunate to work in an area in Italy, which I mean, Italy is a like the UK is it's a vacation destination, and it's a world destination in a way. It's got so much history and so much to see that there are so many hotels there. I think when we started our company 2005, we were very conscious that many of the hotels in Italy are still privately owned or family owned. And I think in a way that's been one of its strengths, but fundamentally it's also caused a certain weakness that when now you see some of the big chains like Intercontinental or Hilton or Marriott arriving within Europe and reinforcing their brands, and they're competing against some of these, privately owned hotels. That these privately owned hotels, when people are making searches for them, just don't come up unless you're looking on hotels.com or something like that. And so many of the hotels are now looking at rebranding or finding a way and coming into a booking system which is more international. I think you also find that some of the investment companies, which are very prevalent now in the world, look at Italy as being an area where they can reinvest. And we found that we've been approached directly by investment companies now who are buying up what I would call as, say, stressed assets, hotels that have enormous potential, but maybe over the last few years just hasn't been performing to the par that they should have. Right. And again, as soon as that happens, you're going to find someone who wants to step in, buy it, rebrand it, reformulate the interior, and make it something of a kind of, again, a world destination space. And there was just so many hotels in Italy like that over the years that they've always been popular, they've always been busy, but they just haven't had the edge over the competition. And nowadays, people are becoming so much more sophisticated when they travel and making hotel choices that if they're going to go to Rome, Milan, Venice, Tuscany, Florence, they're not just going to want to stay in an average hotel. They want to stay in a hotel that's, they can record on their Instagram the look and feel of it and show off where they've been, whatever. And, and Italy is, you've got the cities, but you've also got the coast. And again, Rimini, Tuscany, got some fantastic places to go and have a short stay. Sardinia, Sicily. I could go on and on. These are just full of hotels which are just looking for a retouch, a rebrand. And I think that's where we come in. And funnily enough, I mean, the other thing to say is that in Italy, of course, I mean, Italy is full of architects and great architects, and architecture is one of those studies that a lot of people do. But funnily enough, there are not a lot of hospitality designers, a few, but not maybe which have a kind of international experience that we kind of carry now with our brand. So again, we found something that is kind of our USP being Anglo-Italian, being able to speak the language of the big brands like Hilton, Marriott, Intercontinental, but also talk locally with the owners of the hotels and kind of bridge that gap between them. That's been our USP really, and it's been something which we've been very, very conscious of over the last 10 years. And now it seems to be that, with the new investment arriving, that's been a real possibility for us.
I love it. I think I love your passion for the hospitality sector. There was a question that's popped in from Mathilda, and hopefully I've got this right. But what she asks is, how do you manage to have architectural commissions or projects, or how are you winning work at the moment? Or I think what she's asking is, do you win work from competitions, or is it the reputation that you've built up over the years? Because you touched upon it lightly that you set up THDP many years ago. Is it an ongoing effort? And
well, as we are interior designers, I mean, our architectural designers, we don't tend to do too much architecture, but we do interior space planning, interior architecture, I would call it. So that generally you don't win commissions through that, through competitions as much as you're just talking to. I mean, the funny thing is, we thought that if we knew the brands, if we had good relationships with Hilton and Marriott, Intercontinental, which we do, and we know all the designers and we know all the team there, the project managers, that would deliver projects to us. And that's not always the case. Of course, we win projects through recommendation through the brands. Where we actually do better is arriving earlier on the scene and talking right from the get-go with hotel owners or investment groups who are looking to formulate a team and put together a trusting and having a trusting relationship with an architectural interior design based company that can talk hotels, can talk to owners, and can talk about the economics and foundations about building or rebuilding or rebranding or refurbishing an existing property, and understanding from the get-go what all of those connotations mean. And in that case, it may even be that the investment company or the owner of the hotel doesn't even have a brand in mind. So that sometimes we play the other way around. We actually then go back and say, look, this hotel could be, you could talk to Intercontinental, you could go and talk to Marriott, you could go and talk to Hilton, and we may make that introduction as well. And again, that kind of delivers a kind of certain positive feedback as well. If we're giving to the brands hotels and the brands are giving us hotels, then it's a kind of win-win situation for both of us. And so over the years, we've really concentrated our efforts in talking to owners and investment companies, or even insurance companies, because insurance companies are like little banks in a way. They're just full of money looking to kind of reinvest it. And hotels in Italy in particular are something which is something which they're looking at.
It's beautiful projects, and that's really insightful. What I was thinking as well, Nick, and we touched upon it briefly before this chat. So there's two questions. There's one I've got in mind, and there's one from Alex as well. So we'll start off quickly with Alex's one. Do you remember I mentioned Alex was the tech fanatic with the computer? So we've got a bit of an interesting tech question, and this is just more of your perception of BIM. So remember, we were chatting briefly about it earlier. Alex is wondering if you had any requests on BIM level 2 hotels where clients would get a finished model for their facilities management. So have you had requests from the clients yet about BIM models, or is it not so important compared to public projects yet?
I mean, we're very conscious of using BIM modeling and programs like Revit, for example. We've not had a project yet where from the get-go we've had the architect working in BIM. It's something which I think is generally perhaps on more public projects. I know the requirement now for the UK is that all public projects are designed in BIM. I mean, as interior designers, I think we're not alone in thinking that with the sophistication of interiors that we need to deliver, then working in that environment can be quite costly, not just for us, but also for the client. And what does it financially deliver back to them? And I think, as I said, I'm pretty sure that in the coming years, that as this becomes more of an industry standard, which in some areas it certainly is, for interior design, it's not yet, but as it does over the coming years, as hotel chains buy into the idea of using those tools not just for visualizing, but also for procuring finishes or costing out contractors' finishes and scheduling furnishings, etc., that they may request that. So we're not there yet. We've never been asked, but it's something which we want to embrace. One thing I would say in relation to kind of producing 3D visuals, and this is just a kind of a screenshot of one of them. Obviously, we work in Photoshop and produce 2D visuals, and we work in 3D, producing 3D modeling. One thing we're very conscious of is the potential marketing of the property. And again, what we tend to do for these visuals, not just of the rooms but of the public areas, is use them for early marketing for the hotel, so that they actually can, 3 or 4 months before the opening of the various spaces that we've designed, use these visuals in the lobby, or use them on their marketing and whatever, on their social media, and to gain some traction really in regards to future sales. And it's something which we buy into very early. We have a communications team that use all of these materials in our social marketing or social media, in order to kind of to gain more insights to where we can possibly go with them. One thing we're looking at now, which is again, it's in certain architectural projects is more relevant, is kind of the walkthrough renderings. And again, it's something which, as a cost element, we don't get directly asked by the brands to do that. because they are very conscious of the costs of that. And obviously, it would be the owner of the hotel who would have to pay for it. So if the brands were to stipulate, we would require in terms of sign off a walkthrough video, they're making another cost. They're putting on the owner a new cost in terms of developing that hotel and rebranding that hotel. So that's probably why they're a little bit shy in actually asking for that, because they would realize that might involve another cost to the owner. But I think maybe the owners will probably realize that that has a marketing value, an early marketing value, and it's something which I know that, given the lockdown situation in the world, for things like mock-up rooms, and again, this is a mock-up room here, to do the virtual mock-up room in the future might be something which most brands will ask for, as opposed to making a physical mock-up room, actually producing a walkthrough, something kind of interactive space that you can actually walk up to the bed, switch on the light, walk over to the TV, turn on the TV, and you can actually walk around the various touch points of the guest room, and actually really understand how the space works. And the immediacy of that and producing that, as opposed to physically making the room, I think would deliver us cost savings back to the hotel and actually save them time in terms of the guest room development. So I can see that really happening. And I know that Hilton, for example, Larry Traxler, I was talking to, who's the head of design for Hilton recently, and he said, he's actually on two or three projects in the States, has actually requested that, because obviously there's a limitation of how we can travel and visit properties. So by having a kind of virtual scenario where you can put on the goggles, as it were, and suddenly walk through the space, has been very meaningful in terms of actually signing off these spaces and allowing them to move forward under their approval.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, Alex, it's a great question, and I'm definitely up for returning to, because I can see that you turned on your video and you're raring to go, and you are my technology enthusiast, and I love all the stuff you mentioned on the social. What I was going to ask Nick, Alex, if you don't mind for 1 second, is more of what would be an interesting question for the breadth of the architecture social, because there's a lot of people that are probably looking for jobs right now, more at a junior point, and last year was a bit of a bashing for everyone, as you say. But because you are looking at the moment for a junior interior designer, that's on your website, which is great.
And we're looking for a technical designer, someone who can do the design development, technical drawings for the project as well. I mean, as I said, we've got a level of interest in THDP from owners, from investors, which is unprecedented. We've never had so many inquiries as we have now. So we're team building at the moment. I mean, we have had CVs and portfolios come through to us, and one thing I've noticed, especially from I don't know if anyone who's currently studying is on the call. And what I've noticed in portfolios is how serious they take themselves, and maybe they should just free themselves up and look at their portfolio in another way. I mean, for me, when I'm looking at a portfolio, obviously I want to understand very quickly what someone's capable of doing. But I'm also interested really in their attitude, what they think about what they do. And I've seen some portfolios which have been very earnest and have shown drawings and renderings and try to show 3D renderings, which I'm sure Alex would agree. Doing a 3D rendering is a skill in itself. I mean, actually doing a 3D modeling and lighting it and producing it, whatever. I mean, obviously there's very simple programs out there like SketchUp and V-Ray and as an addition, as a bolt-on to SketchUp. But often the results can be a little bit ropey, and when we're producing visuals for projects, this is one we did a couple of years ago. On where are we?
It's quite nice.
Let me just find it. Oh, wrong way. When we're producing visuals for projects, there you go. This is one of them, which is we have Marcello Acquati, which we employ in Italy. He works in Bergamo. So he's not based in our studio, but he's a full-time employee of the company. And it's great having him on board to work with, because he could sit and work from a very early point on the project and get really deep into the detail of what we're trying to achieve. But what I'm saying about portfolios and junior designers, but for them to produce something of this quality would be very, very difficult. And I was just kind of communicating with an applicant just this morning, in fact, and just saying, look, rather than trying to produce poor quality 3D visuals of your work or your ideas, look at it another way. If you can sketch, do sketches. If you can do great Photoshop and 2D visuals, that's just as valid. I mean, what I'm trying to say really is it's all about getting your ideas over. I mean, for me, this is just a point of communication. A 3D rendering is just a way of showing the client what's inside our head as such, as designers, as a team. And obviously having a visual like this is very, very useful. But even by producing mood boards or sample boards or 3D sketches or 2D sketches or sample boards showing actual materials, it's just as important, or producing a kind of, this is a 2D rendering done in Photoshop. This can express just as much. And if you're eloquent enough to talk around why you've actually laid the room out like this, to me, it's just as valid to be part of your portfolio. So I would say to any applicant, really, look at what's in your portfolio. What doesn't say anything good about you, take out. Look at it again. Just put all of your best work in. Take out the mediocre work, and if you need to, just put more sketches, more photographs. Make it more about you, more about your attitude as a designer, what you want to say. Because to me, that's just as interesting, especially when you're talking to a junior designer. And for me, it's not just about the quality of their work, but more about the attitude that they're going to bring to the company. Because for me, attitude is probably 85% of what it is a junior designer needs to be in a company.
Wow, lots of pearls of wisdom in there. And I think it's really, really interesting to hear that kind of feedback. And hopefully it is useful to anyone that's looking for a job right now. And I think you're right. Attitudes is so important. And also for anyone that's had a rough time in the last year, I think that don't let that get you down. You could dust it off and keep going. And as you said, Nick, that attitude and just keeping going and speaking open and honestly with a hardworking, determined attitude, I think that shines through. So yeah. Really, really interesting. What I was going to say now is, because I'm conscious we're running up to 2:00. Maybe what we can do is, like, last chance saloon. If there's any quick questions for Nick, I'm more than happy to do that. And then what we can do is we can leave on a note where people can find you, they can reach out to you, they can email, they can send through their application, or they can ask questions about PVC and all this stuff. But is there any last questions? Alex, I can see that you've unmuted yourself and you're on video. Are you waiting to say anything, or are you all good?
I'm good. I just wanted to kind of show that there's somebody in this room.
Yay!
Hi, Alex.
Yeah, you're a gentleman, and I think it was a great question with BIM, and I really enjoyed Nick, your answer about kind of being flexible around the client, and it's you're all up for doing it. It's just about whether or not it's needed, and talking about the cost implications.
Yeah,
but it's definitely the way everything's going, and it'll be interesting to see how it materializes.
I think as well, what I was sort of say is that one of the big one of the things in hotels is obviously the execution of the project and the procurement of it. And I think when the software is fully unified, because obviously we use software for doing FF&E scheduling and this type of thing. But when you have a BIM system which is completely unified in terms of delivering not just a rendering, but delivering then a scheduling of contractors' finishes, and even a scheduling of furnishings, then you have you've kind of closed that loop as such. At the moment, I don't think that loop is necessarily closed, because when you're talking about a hotel interior like this, we might have 20 different fabrics, and we might have 16 different finishes and tiling and wood and veneer and laminate and whatever it may be, or the glassware, and then on top of that, you've got all of the contractors' finishes, which is like another schedule. And managing all of that information within a BIM environment, as I said, I'm not a proponent necessarily right now of BIM, because I don't see the joined up meaning of it. But and I see in a more architectural sense that actually makes more sense from an interiors point of view. There are software which are gradually linking into all of those things. We use a software called Folio, which actually works with BIM. And it's one of the reasons I chose it. We picked it up last year. It's a fantastic software. If anyone wants to kind of have a look at it, Folio is FOHLIO.com. They have a fantastic web clipper as well, so you can actually clip information straight out of a website, straight into your schedule, images, schedules, drawings, DWGs, 3ds models, straight into your schedule, and then that's completely linkable into your database, so that you can click on the link and you go back into the page that you actually found the product from, and then you can send that directly to the client and get it all signed off.
Amazing.
It's really, really useful, and very much unlike a typical Excel database, which I guess for most designers is sitting in front of an Excel screen for half a day is like death. The Folio is very visual, and as I think as designers, you know, who are visual people, that's a key consideration for us in picking up on that. There you go, it's a free advert for them.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow. Free sponsorship. I tell you what, Nick, you'll laugh at what last time I was in architectural practice, I actually accidentally lost in Excel £500,000 a square foot. So I'm definitely not the man for Excel. So I'm sure Folio sounds like a great solution. I think this has been brilliant. It's been great to see the projects. It's been great to have an open and honest conversation and to cover things from BIM covered. We talked about materials, we talked about products and technology, as well as applying for jobs, which is amazing. So on this note now, I think what would be great, Nick, is if we can leave it on a note where if anyone's got any questions after this, where can they find you? How can they get in contact on email or find the website and find more projects? That would be great if you can fill us in on that.
Sure. So we're on LinkedIn as THDP. I'm also on LinkedIn as Nicholas Hickson, and my wife is Manuela Menino. Our website is www.thdpdesign.com.
Great.
And my email, if you want my email, I'm happy to give it out. It's nhickson, as one word, NHICKSON, at thdpdesign.com. Feel free to email me. I just say hi to Amy. I see she's on board. She's muted. That's my daughter, by the way.
Hey, Amy.
Hey.
Hiya.
You know
I've got no
your dad
idea
is.
what you guys are talking about, but it's very interesting to listen.
Amazing.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
You've already got your dad's email, so it won't be relevant to you.
Exactly. So, yeah, so feel free to reach out. I'm happy to engage with anyone or everyone and answer any other questions.
Amazing. This has been so great.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this. What I'm going to do now, you've heard all that. Do get in contact with Nick. Nick has been fantastically patient with setting this up. And this is the first run. I think actually it's got quite a nice feel to it. And I love the questions and answers. And so thank you as well, Guy and Alex and Matilda for answering the questions, because that's what it's all about. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop recording and everyone can crack on with the rest of the day and get in contact with Nick. Thank you so much, everyone who came. Yeah,
all right.
Back to work.
Thanks, Stephen, and we'll speak soon. Take care.
Take care. All right, guys. Going to shut down the room in a bit. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nick. I'll be the last one out. The last one out, isn't it? It's like, all right, okay. See you later, guys.